Today we're going to be talking about possessive adjectives. So let's first start with what a possessive adjective is. Well, if we break it down by the name, it's an adjective to talk about who is possessing something. So, for example, if I were to say, my book, my would be the possessive adjective. My is demonstrating that the book belongs to me. And so what these look like in Spanish are these right here. And I've separated them into the normal groups. So for example, like the yo, the tú, the él, usted, nosotros, vosotros, and ellos, ustedes. So this can belong to I, belong to you, belong to him or her, so on and so forth. So me is going to translate to my. Tú, your. Notice there's no accent on it as well. If I'm going to say you, there has to be an accent on it. If I'm going to say your, no accent. This one, his, hers, yours, or sorry, his, her, your formal, or it could also be it, and this one right here, our, and then finally we're looking at su. Once again, can be their, or it can be your guys's, your guys. And so a couple things to notice right off the bat. First is that the él, usted form and the ellos, ustedes forms of this are going to be the same. The su, both going to stay consistent right here. And so basically the way that we're going to know which form we're talking about is based on context in these. And then another thing to notice is that I've put these s's behind it. And so let's talk a little bit about what these means. And then for nuestro as well, I put an a, os, and as. So one thing about possessive adjectives is we have to note that they're adjectives. And so they're going to play by the rules of adjectives in Spanish. And so if you remember the rules of adjectives in Spanish, it always has to match in number and gender. So for example, if I were to say, I am tall versus we are tall, this is going to be soy alto versus somos altos. So you can see that the alto in this case is singular versus in this case is plural. And if I were to say we are tall in reference to us being girls, it'd have to be altas. Or I am tall if I was a girl, it'd have to be soy alta. And so we can see that anytime that we're talking about adjectives, it has to agree in the number and gender, which is a little bit weird because in English, we don't do that. The adjective is the same in every form. However, in Spanish, they have four forms. They have the singular masculine, singular feminine, plural masculine, and finally plural feminine. And so because of this, we need to change our form of adjective based on what it's describing with these possessive adjectives as well. Now, the easiest one to get is the nuestro. We can see nuestro, nuestra, nuestros, and nuestras. Very similar, right, to the example I just gave with alto, alta, altos, and altas. And so this one has the normal four forms, but you may notice that these other ones only have two. And that is because these are known as gender neutral. So for example, if I were to say I am intelligent, we'd say soy inteligente versus we are intelligent, somos inteligentes. But one thing to note is that this is known as gender neutral. If an adjective at its base form doesn't end in an O, if it ends in something like an E, sometimes it'll be gender neutral, especially when it ends in E's. And so, for example, when we're looking at these, soy inteligente can mean I am intelligent in reference to either a guy, or if I was a girl, it'd be the same thing, soy inteligente. Versus we are intelligent, same thing, it can be somos, but we're going to be talking about inteligentes, because we still have to look at that singular versus plural form. See that we're still making this plural, but now it's gender neutral, so there's no difference between if we're talking about guys or girls. And so because these ones end in an I and U's, these are known as gender neutral adjectives, which means that they can work for both guys and girls. So now let's look at an example of a possessive adjective being used. If I were to say, it is my backpack. It is my backpack. What we're going to do is we're going to say es, it is mi mochila. But if I were to say, they are my backpacks, they are my backpacks, say son, and then now that I've made mochilas plural, we're going to have to say mis mochilas. And so you can see that one thing to note is that they're always going to be based on the thing that is being possessed. So if I were to say, let's say, it is our, we'll say, tables. It is our tables. Sorry, we'll do, they are our tables. They are our tables. We'd say son, and even though in this case, this is in the ES form, now what we have to do is we have to line it up with tables. So nuestras mesas. So nuestras mesas. And so you can see that this is always going to be corresponding to what is being talked about. If we're talking about mesas, in this case, this has to be nuestras. So overall, possessive adjectives, a main takeaway to think about is the fact that they mainly work by like adjectives, and the fact that there are singular versions, there are plural versions. And then another thing to note is the fact that it's always going to be in reference to what is being possessed, not who is possessing. Now, one more thing to note is if I was to say it is John's table. It is John's table. You can see that John is nowhere on this chart. If I want to say it is his table, we could use su. If I want to say it is John's table, to specify, we would have to say es la mesa. It's the table of John, de John. And so we can see that basically what we're going to do is we're going to use this de to show who's possessing now. And so this is for more specific instances. A lot of times you can just use these up here, the possessive adjectives. But if you want to specify who exactly is possessing it, you can use de to show who the table is from or who the table is of. So es la mesa de John literally means it's the table of John, or it's John's table. So overall, that's how I'd essentially talk about possessing things in Spanish, possessive adjectives, and then also the use of de in order to specify who exactly can be possessing something. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.